This is very exciting. Hi, I'm Dale Peterson, and welcome to the Unsolicited Response Show. Joining me on the show this episode is Peter Lund. He is the VP of Product Management with Industrial Defender. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Dale. Thanks for having me.
Well, you got my attention. You've been putting out some other content related to SOAR in ICS or SOAR in OT. It's a very new effort, I think, that people are starting to look at. We just got used to SIEM in OT, or SIEM being related to OT, and now we're getting into this new term of SOAR. I guess maybe as a starting point, as I said, we've seen now products like yours, products like Dragos, Nozomi, and others are sending OT data to the SIEM. And people are beginning to understand that. They're saying, okay, I understand how you might want all that data in one place to analyze it and determine what's going on. But now we've got this new term, this SOAR, Security Orchestration, Automation, and Response. Maybe spend 1 to 3 minutes just telling us what a SOAR is.
Sure. It's really about taking action or making things happen based on what you're seeing within your SIEM or even places that are outside of your SIEM. You've got some other business process that can potentially feed it information, and it's really just about automating response. It might be as simple as, seeing an event and opening a ticket, or it might be as, aggressive as seeing a bad actor or a bad action or malware occurring, say on an HMI or a historian, and deciding to, fail over to a different backup and actually, drop connections from that firewall. So it goes everything from, simple safe operations to those detailed things that can make a difference, during an attack or during a compromise.
And I was as I was looking up definitions of this, you can imagine there were a million of them. I thought Swim Lane had a nice one. They, when you look at SOAR, security, orchestration, they said orchestration was the, quote, integration of disparate security tools and platforms to enable automated incident response. And then the automation part, they defined as the ability to execute a sequence of tasks related to a security workflow without human intervention.
Yeah, so I think it's a great definition. Yeah.
And then response is obviously what you do.
So, right.
So you gather all the information together with context, with understanding, you create a workflow and automate it to some degree. And we'll get into whether it's partial or full automation in a little bit here. But maybe start out by, now that we know what it is, give me an example of a big win for SOAR and OT.
Sure. So there's certainly, starting with the basic visibility bits, but let's say, a great example of a use case we've kind of been exploring is, someone uses removable media, and, with some of the great detection bits we've built into our platform, we're able to tell if that removable media is kind of part of the company approved bits. Maybe they've standardized on, these are the 5 you run around with OT, and that's it. Well, someone plugs in something that wasn't on that approved list. And, it could be innocuous, could be just a vendor was there doing some maintenance. They didn't know about the policy, or, was trying to get his work done before he wanted to jump on the plane on a Friday afternoon. And, maybe we're going to circumvent a little process, and I think it's safe. I think it's okay. Well, that, gets detected by the platform. Then again, shared up through an integration with a SIEM, or maybe it's an integration with ServiceNow, or a number of different places you could send that sort of information, and then that gives the analyst, whether it be on the OT side, the IT side, or whomever is ultimately looking at that, can have an intelligent conversation with the OT team, saying, "Hey, it looks like you used some non-approved removable media. What's going on over there? Do we need to be worried about it? Is it innocuous? Was it expected? I knew you were doing maintenance last week, but this week you guys didn't have any maintenance windows. So kind of what's going on." And it allows to have the IT side and the OT side to have the same context, different tools, and then can have an intelligent conversation.
But where's the SOAR part of that? Because you would, if you were talking to someone who was pushing a SIEM, they'd tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
Say, hey, you're going to get this alert, and it's going to, tell you unauthorized USB drive connected.
Yeah.
So then the SIEM would do that. What is the SOAR doing that the SIEM isn't doing?
Yes, so perfect. So SOAR becomes, instead of the analyst having to notice that and interpret it, you can see that that event might come in with some asset-based context, and SOAR can say, "Ooh, I saw that came from OT. I see that's an HMI. I know Pete's the asset owner over there. I'm going to send him an email or a text and alert him to what's going on in case he's not there. You know, maybe he's out that day. The vendor was unattended, or didn't maybe have the visibility they were hoping for, or he had to run out to deal with some issue. They now have kind of completed the loop from an event out of OT with an alert or an action that now IT, maybe a ticket's open, and Pete's responsible for letting that process actually continue. He has to be kind of checked in and determine what do we do next. Is this okay or not?
It's funny. I'm kind of an old timer in this business. Even before I was heavily involved in OT in the early 2000s, these SIEMs were just starting to come out. ArcSight and other people had them.
Sure.
And they talked about them having automated responses. That was one of the selling points. Hey, it was very early, and it actually was a long time before this value was actually captured. But they talked about, hey, well, not only can you find this, but we can take an action and do this sort of thing. And in fact, you're starting to see that even in some of the OT detection products, saying we can find this and we can send a rule to your firewall to
Yeah, you
change or
see
something
some
like
some
that.
firewall changes, and there's always been a little bit of a debate on do you want your detection platform being your action platform, or do you want separate church and state? And that's certainly another great
Now
discussion there.
that's I think it's pretty clear though that they have separated them into separate products. Even if you look at someone like Splunk, who has their SIEM, and now they have their SOAR product. IBM has QRadar as their SIEM, and actually they changed their name. It was funny. Everyone's changing their name from Resilient or Phantom to just SOAR. So now you have IBM's QRadar SIEM and now QRadar, or now IBM SOAR. So the market seems to have agreed on that. How does this work though if you have a SOAR that's from a different vendor? Let's say it's a ServiceNow or a swim lane SOAR, and you have a Splunk SIEM. Does that ever happen? Or if you have Splunk, you go all the way with Splunk? Or
No,
do you see mix and match?
Yeah, it's definitely mix and match. So specifically with Splunk, who we're fairly well partnered with, their Phantom platform, which they call SOAR now, is fully open to other inputs. So you might have Phantom with QRadar, or you might have Phantom and ServiceNow, or kind of any combination of the two. They're very highly programmable. They're all API, Python sort of driven, where you can take an input from kind of any API and make an output to another API. So highly customizable, but very powerful at the same time.
Are you seeing that happen in practice, or is it still too new to know?
I think it's really the cutting edge folks that are kind of getting there right now. So the OT, IT convergence or data sharing or whatever term we might want to call it these days is still maybe 50-50. So we've got probably half the more mature parts of the market, the folks who've done some amount of instrumentation, either with Industrial Defender or another tool, and they're starting to get value out of the monitoring. But we still got a fair amount of the market who is either doing spreadsheets or just simply doing nothing, especially as you look at recent compromises. It was lack of visibility to legacy VPN, or lack of visibility to some remote access software that maybe wasn't configured correctly. So we've still got some of those fundamental challenges, and kind of up from there, you've got, okay, well, we've done some amount of instrumentation. The events are flowing to the SIEM, but we don't really have the context to know what to do about them. So it's more like, okay, this is a log repository. We're going to open it up. We're going to do a query when there's an incident, so we can go back and figure out, do the incident response steps. What did the time like? Who got in? How did they get through? There isn't a ton who have fully matured to the centralized IT OT SOC with OT kind of personnel understanding the processes and really getting deep into that SOAR bit. I think it's where we all want to get to, but the technology is there, but we haven't kind of caught up in the people, process, and even like trust, right? So there's the trust between IT and OT, where OT is certainly attempted to take IT tools, or in some
Yeah,
cases,
yeah,
voluntold to take the IT tool, and we're going to do our scan, and it's going to be great. And, we see what happens. So there's
yeah, yeah.
a bit of
Well,
a
I
back
think,
and forth. Yeah.
yeah, I think our audience probably is well aware and living that for years and years. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we don't need to go too deeply into that. I do think that SEM SOAR from different vendors is interesting, and not really an OT issue. It's all probably more of a IT issue, because they're facing that same decision in IT with right now a lot more data and a lot more use cases. But sticking with OT, when we got into the SEM marketplace, and it's still this way today mostly, we were seeing what I would call uncharitably dumb data dumps.
Yeah.
So log files dumped from the OT source, such as Industrial Defender and others, into Splunk, QRadar, whoever you want to use. But those are certainly the two biggest we hear about over and over again. Then that was of some use because, okay, it's all in there. And in fact, you could look at it, but it wasn't all correlated in any way. There wasn't a lot of context to it. And then Splunk, to their credit, has taken 2 bites of the apple on this OT add-on. And the second one I was really impressed with. I've actually done a show with them. I'll link to that in the show notes and an article. But in the second OT add-on, they added context. They said, hey, OT sources, don't just send us your events, but send them in this format so we know whether it's related to a PLC or an engineering workstation. Tell us what Purdue level it's on. Tell us its criticality. And even some asset inventory information beyond just vendor name. So they were getting a lot more context into the SEM. And we've seen the same thing with ServiceNow for their asset inventory. They came up with a manufacturing module that allows,
they've got an OT module now, which is great.
Yeah, which allows people like you to dump data in with intelligence. So I would say those, certainly on the SEM side, those products are much better now because that context is there.
Yeah, and it's
So
really
this is all
enabling.
leading up.
Yeah,
it's
really
all
enabling
leading up.
SOAR. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, that was my question. Do you need OT customization of the SOAR product, not just obviously every process in SOAR that's orchestrated, automated, and responded is customized to the event. That's true in IT as well as OT. But does the SOAR product need, is there an equivalent of like a SOAR add-on for Splunk SOAR needed?
I think more of the add-on is the OT playbook. So in that case, it's understanding what is safe and okay and good to do based on your OT's team. So it's really about making that kind of OT playbook. And we haven't really seen a generic kind of SOAR OT playbook come out, because you've got a lot of different customers and industries with different kind of levels of maturity and comfortability. But that is something that we've been in some good discussions with the Splunk SOAR team as we've been kind of building out some of the integrations that we've had some success with as of late.
Well, so if the source of the asset inventory is not the SOAR, basically the SOAR ingests an asset inventory, like it does at least in the Splunk case. I don't know about all the other ones. ServiceNow, I guess, has this add-on to ingest the asset inventory. So then the other customization would be these workflows or playbooks that you're talking about. But that would be true really of any vertical market. Like you could say there might be healthcare playbooks, there might be stock trading playbooks, there might be server farm playbooks and such. So you're saying we'll eventually get to the point where some of these vendors will create OT playbooks, or is that something even Industrial Defender might do?
Yeah, that's something we might even do. You're already seeing it into the IT side. So if you take a look behind the covers of Phantom or SOAR today, you'll see a number of apps or add-ons, things from Active Directory, things from IT firewall vendors. And they kind of have, we'll say, frameworks for you to work in. Like, here's a typical firewall workflow, and then you kind of at the end get to customize the bits that make sense for your org. What you'll allow it to do what you want to allow it to do. So they do kind of have these canned workflows that kind of give you a bit of a head start. But you really do want to start kind of simple and get buy-in from all the teams involved and kind of build it up slowly over time. It's not one of the things you can kind of rush into where, something like an asset visibility project, much lower risk, easier. You start to kind of see the data. Where SOAR, you're talking about actions and impacting teams and potentially being disruptive to the process. So that's, some more kid gloves and some more coordination. And that's where that maturity and the context, like the enrichments on top of the OT data, that really kind of helps you get that context. So you can look at the industrial defender context, and a SOC analyst can look at the same data in the Splunk, common information model, or the OT asset model, or any of the kind of Splunk add-ons that kind of glue the two data sets together in the native tools of each side of the equation there.
You mentioned simple there. I noticed I had a chance to watch your and Chris Duffy's webinar on CSA
Sure.
after it was out. And he had, I think it was on one of his slides, he said that SOAR is ideal for repeatable, repetitive, meaning it happens often, simple, and known workflows or processes. You gave I thought, a really good example with that removable media. Do you have a couple more that you think would fit potentially in that bucket of something that would be good for SOAR?
Yeah, we've been kind of cooking up a few other kind of safe workflows. One being kind of pulls in some of our integration with FoxGuard. So FoxGuard, as most folks know, can provide that kind of OEM level assurance of this patch has been approved and it's safe for you to put on your GE system, your ABB system. Well, that's kind of information sharing that we do on our platform with FoxGuard. And we can now pass that up to Splunk and say, the OT side of the house actually has some patches that they can push. I know it's oftentimes few and far between with maintenance windows and comfortability, but if I'm getting intel that, FoxGuard says it's okay, it's been validated by the vendor, it happens to close these CVEs, this is a high value patch, you can turn that into a ServiceNow ticket in a workflow that says, hey, FoxGuard says there's a patch available, Industrial Defender says you don't have it in place because we're kind of the ground truth there. And then you can have a ticket open and have someone start to work on that patch workflow without having to pull those disparate sources together. And that's, for Windows systems that you're actually actively patching, that's something that happens every patch Tuesday. And that's, very labor intensive. And those are the things where you can kind of get some ROI or some gain out of SOAR. And it's funny, most of the SOAR platforms will tell you, how many things they've automated and take a crack at telling you, what your ROI is, or how many man hours or person hours or dollars you've saved by automating. So it's always fun to see their take on that.
You're getting, though, into maybe the last area I wanted to touch on this subject, and that was this partial versus fully automated response. So everything I've heard so far is what I would call a partial response, because you're not actually taking the action. You're identifying the action, you're perhaps creating a ticket for the action, but you're not actually making a change to anything in OT based on what I've heard. And even in your interview with Chris, I hope I got this right, he said there will always be a person in the loop in OT. Now, he might have meant that just at the beginning, but let me ask this as a two-parter. Do you see processes today that could be fully automated that would make changes in OT? And if not, do you see them happening in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think we can get there. I think the most important part, there's an example we've been throwing around, is when you get that alert from OT and you have kind of the deep asset context being provided, by our asset inventory system, the criticality level of the asset, for example, or the Purdue model level, or you might know it's the backup historian or the backup HMI. If one of those devices starts showing, signs of malware or some irregularities, having all that context, you likely know it's safe to maybe shut off access to that asset's network connectivity. So start dropping, packets from it. If you know that it's backup, you can validate that the other one is online and in use with your other live data stream. That's something that might save you from, kind of malware spreading around. So there, I think we can get there, and it is about having the right contextual information to make that automated response, or even perhaps put a human in the loop of, hey, I'm suggesting automated response X. Do you approve? Pete, you're in the loop. Once you hit the approve button, I'll go do that response for you and kind of let you go back to bed until the morning comes and you can sort it all out. So I think we can definitely get there, but we're in baby steps mode right now.
It's funny, the way you described it, I think is what I heard from Josh Magedy of 1898 and Company. This topic is I think very important, for if you're looking at the future. Let's say you've got a mature program and you're saying, what should I be looking at implementing in the next 1 to 5 years, which is why we put one of the 4 Autobahn training modules before S4 is SOAR in ICS, just because I think that. And when I was trying to understand if there was enough there to really teach a 90-minute course on this, what they said was that a lot of what you said, that they're applying automatically soft restrictive rule sets. So they weren't necessarily doing things that were going to really shut things down, but things that would maybe limit the system beyond its normal limitations, but still allow the process to run. And they're seeing that level of automation today in terms of it. And I think the example you gave was great, is, hey, this isn't a critical asset. Maybe we'll isolate it from all other critical assets or something like that. Yeah. So I like that. But I actually think the possibilities here are maybe a little bigger in the future. For example, once we get more and more of our environment virtualized or in a container-like environment, could you see the case? This is one that just pops into my mind. We know how attractive of a target the engineering workstations are for attackers, right? Because they're the ones with the rights to change the way the whole system works. And in a certain sense, they are not, during active operations, they shouldn't be used, right? They're used there to modify the system.
Yeah, change a set point. You're generally just watching, right? For the most part.
Right. So why wouldn't I, let's say if I had that in a container or virtual machine, with something with vSphere or vMotion, whatever you're using, why wouldn't I have an automated rule that says, hey, if I determine anything medium or high alert with, a strong likelihood of not being a false positive, if I see these things happening in this category, shut that thing down and spin up another one that is known good.
Yeah. I mean, that's futuristic for OT, but I don't think we're too far off. There's a path there. Absolutely.
And when you think about it, to me, it almost, what do you think is, I was going to answer the question. Let me ask the question. I'm interviewing here. Sure. What do you think is stopping us from doing that today? What are the hindering factors to moving there or more, not moving there more quickly?
It's funny because so much in ICS and OT is automated, right? We have safety systems that kick in automatically. We have backup control centers that turn on, backup generators, you name it. We have a backup for a backup to make sure we're going to keep the process going, right? But for some reason, there's this IT modernization. I don't know if it's a distrust or a fear, uncertainty of the unknown, since virtualization is, we'll say not new, but it's still relatively new in OT. It's probably still the exception and not the rule in the bulk of the customer sets that we see. I think it's just the unknown, and the possibilities just aren't well understood in that kind of in your average asset owner. They're not as informed in what's available technology wise, and their job is to keep that process going, right?
I think you're spot on there in terms of understanding. It's certainly partly cultural, right? This is not the world they live in typically, but also if you're an engineer or technician that understands how the process works and have actually made the process work that way, you're very used to only doing things you have high confidence in that you know you can do with your own hands. And now this technology comes in from outside that you don't know about, that, you're saying, hey, trust me. So to me, I think one of the things really holding us back is just knowledge. It's a little bit of confidence. They're not going to have the confidence to just say you do it, but also they don't have the knowledge of how the systems work, how to fix them if they break. Then they're just saying, hey, trust us, we'll put this thing in and it'll all work. That's a very uncomfortable feeling. And I think if they actually understood the technology or had trust in the people that understood the technology, we'd get there pretty fast, because the wins are quite sizable of quick response. I think in the announcement we're going to talk about, you mentioned ransomware, behavioral ransomware detection.
Sure.
Boy, it'd be nice to take a fast automated action on behavioral ransomware detection.
Absolutely.
I
I think there's another kind of point nestled in here around kind of the OEM's role. So oftentimes the asset owner is somewhat beholden to, well, the OEM says the system needs to function like this, and they have yet to allow, virtualization, DRS, or automated failover, or that feature or function didn't come built into my control system build out. And, how do I go and start asking the OEM for something they might not know or understand or have as a feature in their kind of OEM build out. So there's sometimes an OEM limitation, which I think in the asset inventory space, we're finally getting through some of the, no, you can't monitor my control system. I think we're doing much better there. But as far as things that truly impact the process, that's a little more hands off, and even sometimes a mystery to the asset owner.
Yeah. I think that what I've run into a lot, and I think this is an area that I would say I'm maybe batting 500 on with my clients, is especially with new systems. A new system will come in. I'm thinking of this Honeywell system that went in a few years ago. They designed, architected, deployed a beautiful virtualized environment on VMware. I mean, it was almost perfect. It was like you brought the VMware team. Kudos to Honeywell for doing that. But it was very sophisticated with, all these machines replacing each other and all sorts of things going on. And I asked my client, the asset owner, I said, well, okay, who's going to maintain this? And they're like, well, they said, if we have any problem, just call Honeywell.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
You just put in a really sophisticated, beautiful system. Let's go to the VMware site and see what they say are the requirements to manage this system. And they had, VMware certified people at various levels with various courses and recommendations for such. And I think that's one of the things that's happened is the OEMs, they love the technology, they know the benefits, but they don't want to tell the asset owners, hey, when you buy this product, you've bought this cyber maintenance responsibility along with it. They're much rather say, oh, it's all good, just call us if there's a problem. Because if they said, oh, it's going to take two more people to administer this on an ongoing basis, they probably wouldn't sell as much. So I do think that OEM honesty combined with the asset owner awareness that they're buying a very sophisticated product is going to be really key. And maybe if they had that level of talent, then maybe we get things like SOAR. I think I went a little far afield there, but I'll give you a chance to comment and then we'll move on to something else.
No, I think I like that OEM discussion, and there is a bit of mystery. And as we layer on newer technologies, it all kind of boils down to, and then the OEMs kind of wanting to own some of that, that security and process and maintenance. That becomes, some of their favorite add-ons of, okay, here comes your patch add-on and your SIEM or security add-on, and they like to keep it in the family sometimes, right?
Well, and I don't mind that if you're paying for it and you're getting the level of service you pay for. You don't have to do it in-house. And this is sometimes we get in this OT-IT argument. I care less about who does it than that it gets done.
Absolutely.
Whether it's a service or a product. Okay, let's move on. A couple of quick questions on Industrial Defender. First of all, you've gone through a number of iterations
Sure.
here. You know, Lockheed, Leidos, Capgemini, Industrial Defender. The current Industrial Defender, are you a product company or a service company?
Absolutely a product company. So we're about, the asset inventory tool set we have that we built out over the years. We obviously layer services on top of that, but we're primarily product based with services that go along with it. We wouldn't, without the product, we wouldn't have standalone services, at least today in our current, as we're calling it, Industrial Defender 2.0 generation here.
I like that. I like not necessarily that you're a product or service company. You know, the answer itself doesn't matter, but I think having a solid answer to that question makes being successful a lot easier. And then the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, you kind of surprised me. You came out with a press release yesterday that Industrial Defender has now an OT machine learning engine. And what is that actually? Is that a product, a service, part of something else? That's what I couldn't figure out, where this engine resides.
Sure. Yeah, we certainly have been busy. And as you see, press releases are back. So we have, our own marketing team. We're not,
Right.
veiled by our various previous corporate owners. But really, we kind of looked at the market and we looked at our capability set and, looking internally, we're great at collecting data. That is what we do the best. Whether it be passive, active combinations, offline files, whatever it might be. We've built this tremendous set of data collection capabilities. And as we've, done integrations with Splunk and other SIEMs over the years, and even in the last 18 months, we've started to look hard at, machine learning as a way to help kind of cut through some of the noise. And we see some of the opposite out there where machine learning ends up generating a lot of noise in some cases where you've got, thousands of sensors deployed and they're all kind of training and learning and they're all kind of in concert doing different things. And in our discussions with Splunk, we've decided to take a different approach where push all of that data that needs to be learned and processed to the data lake, to your Splunk, and leverage their toolkit, their analysts, their kind of professional data scientist group to ultimately do your machine learning. So that's really what OTML is. It's taking things like net flow out of our platform, security events, asset information, and then being able to run models on it, just like you mentioned the ransomware model that looks at the net flow data we bubble up to Splunk and ultimately look for the typical communication patterns in net flow to say that, it looks like that endpoint is beaconing in a manner that matches a typical, malware or ransom type of asset. So we kind of have a different stance and than a lot of the market deploying, potentially hundreds, if not thousands of individual point sensors that all need kind of models and tuning, where if you can do it in a central location, it gets it closer to the data scientist experts, because you really do need to be a data scientist expert to model and look at this information. It's not just something you can, as a asset inventory company and a collection company, you can't just pivot to data science without a real investment. And we look to leverage that Splunk investment to ultimately accelerate our personal company journey to, handling machine learning competitively.
So I'm still, though, a little bit lost. Is this running in Splunk or is this running in your industrial? So it's running in Splunk. So it's a
Absolutely
module
running
for
in Splunk.
Splunk.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's an extension of our Industrial Defender app for Splunk. So now, as an augmenting to that, we've pulled in and tuned some of the Splunk machine learning toolkit to look at that OT data.
Okay, I see. So comes in, now the application not only brings the data into Splunk, but then it also leverages their machine learning engine. I got it. Okay.
Exactly right.
Now I gotta hit. You said you have your own marketing people. I got to hit them a little bit or maybe you can correct me, because it says another industry first in the long line of innovations. I'm trying to understand what's first here, because the ones that you talk about, for example, talking about when two assets are communicating a way that they hadn't before. This was your service and conversation anomalies, communication anomalies, where there's more traffic or less traffic that you've seen before. I mean, those are things we heard from the very first product that I was aware of strictly in this space, the old INL Sophia product. Maybe something in Industrial Defender predates it, but people have been doing that forever. So what is the first here? What do you think is actually new?
The new bit is just the approach. So doing it in a centralized location, basically leveraging Splunk to do it across multiple different data feeds and sources, all at once. So instead of doing it at pinpoints in the network, do it centrally. So you can have one model servicing or multiple models servicing all your different sensors that are out there. So it's the kind of in aggregate approach is the new bit there.
But that was always done at a site level, right? You'd have almost all of the systems had like a 2-tiered where you'd have sensors or collectors out there on switches, hanging off of span ports of switches or tap ports, sending it back to a centralized thing where the analysis would take place. Now, admittedly, that was typically on a site, but we even saw cases then where it was a 3-tiered where it'd go up to, an enterprise-wide type system.
Yeah,
most of the vendors have something like that, have that capability. What's more central? How is this more centralized than that?
we haven't, at least I haven't seen in the market a true enterprise wide one without having to go into something with much bigger capacity like a Splunk. So you've seen most of the OT sensors, they have their sensor and their central management counterpart, not unlike Industrial Defender, but we haven't seen them going to single enterprise panes of glasses, at least for the most part.
Yeah, I have seen that, but I haven't seen it in action. And you're right, there could be a capacity problem there. We've seen that in the industry. I'm sure you've even experienced it in the early years at Industrial Defender, where you get just data overload and you say, hey, we need to beef this system up. And I haven't seen that single pane of glass for, let's say, 100 sites all sending in a lot of information and being able to process it.
So, over the last decade, we've lived that scale challenge. So getting an OT product to scale to enterprise is certainly a challenge. And we have leveraged partners like Splunk, and they can be that enterprise viewpoint if you can feed the data in with the appropriate context. And that's where we're kind of headed.
Okay. Well, we'll keep our eye on that. I'm sure if it was just announced yesterday, so on the 14th, so I'm sure there'll be more information, webinars and all such coming. So we'll keep an eye on that. Now, Peter Lund, VP of Product Management of Industrial Defender. If people want to reach out to you, what's your best socials, or what's the best way for someone to contact you if they have a question on any of this?
Sure. Right on LinkedIn. I'm probably most active there. So I would push folks to LinkedIn, or just plund@industrialdefender.com. Feel free to send things right my way. We're small, and we're happy to chat with folks. So.
And how far along the loop did you make it? Did you start in Lockheed, or where did you start?
I started shortly after the Lockheed acquisition. So I came during the beginning, early Lockheed years, and have survived since then. So
you almost made the full loop, but you were never officially an Industrial Defender before now.
That's right.
It's very good to see one of the first companies to really develop quality products for the OT space back after having wandered through the wilderness for a few years there. So congratulations to the team there, and thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Dale.